okay, I want to know more about you. Not because of just your success in your sport, but truly like what makes you tick and why are you so full of joy? How do you normally approach a race like that?
I wouldn't change it for anything because of that accomplishment and that feeling. We had a chance yesterday to hang out and do a little
We're doing some hard yards.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun.
I've
been training for 10 years. You haven't trained in 10 years, and you're still sticking into screws to me. So.
I was not sticking any screws to you, that's for sure. That was definitely, that was wild. Like I said, I retired, maybe 9 years ago I stopped racing. No, maybe 8 years ago.
All right.
For the most part. And when I stopped, and I really didn't swim much at all. And then you asked me this, or Tal had asked if I would join in a swim or whatever. And I said, yeah, it sounds fun. And then luckily the swim workout got cut short. We only had to do one piece of the main set, but it was a little bit of a suffer for me, that's for sure. So
I'm glad it cut short too, because I was getting embarrassed. So
embarrassed for what?
Because I'm training for 10 years and you quit training cold turkey for 8 years and you're still swimming the exact same times as me. It's embarrassing.
You can fake it.
My talent is 0 in the water, unfortunately.
For a 50, you can cheat it for sure.
All right.
But that's one of the things. So one of the things that I've noticed that you have is how, as far as determined you are, how much grit that you have in your practices, how you look for, from the outside watching, to me it looks like you look for areas that you need to improve and you're not afraid to address those things. Like right now we're talking about swimming, and your first Ironman you were last out of the water of the men's field.
70.3 Worlds, 2014. I remember like it was yesterday.
Last out of the water.
Yeah.
And how far back?
It's an interesting feeling to come out of the water and very easily find your bike because it's the only one left on the rack. Embarrassing. My whole swim career has been embarrassing.
Not anymore, though.
It makes your skin thicker.
But what did you do to really attack that or address that?
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate part is that I've gotten better every single year, literally every single year, and yet my deficits have really not gotten any better because guys are taking more and more of that time that was on the table off the table.
For those who don't know that may be listening to this, an Ironman swim is 2.4 miles. Mm-hmm. Then you get on your bike and you ride 112 miles, and then you finish with a marathon 26.2. So those who now know that this is extreme for sure. It's something that is unique and that
it's extreme in temperate conditions. It's beyond extreme when you come here
in Kona.
Like right now, it's not too bad, but in October, I would say it's like horrible.
Yeah.
A horrible place to exercise at those intensities. And then the course is quite challenging too. It's probably one of the hardest courses if you plop this into temperate conditions.
Yeah, I would agree.
So an Ironman's hard, but it's very hard here.
Yeah. Now you didn't have a swimming background, obviously. So you learned how to swim late in life. But what was your childhood like? Did you grow up doing sport at a really young age, or what was it like?
I've always loved athletics. Absolutely. My first experience was I did t-ball and missed the ball and got hit in the mouth and got a fat lip. So that was my first sporting experience.
T-ball.
Yes, I almost quit sports then, but. And then from there, basically, I got into running very early on. And in year one, I didn't do very good. But then I was thought the guy who won all the races and everything, I thought he was the coolest guy ever. And I was like, I want to be just like that guy. And then in year two, that's when I started to come of age, I guess. And then I started to do well. So running was kind of like my natural thing that I was good at. That was like grade 4. So
early.
In grade 4.
Yeah, like
I don't know, 10 or something.
Maybe
yeah,
younger.
And then I always competed at the highest level that was available to me growing up. But I came from a small town, and so I don't know. It was like pretty quickly I felt obligated to run because it was like once I got into high school, it was expected that I was going to run for the team and I was going to be good too. And that's when I started not really liking running anymore. And so then I went all through high school, basically just going through the motions. And I was partying and all this stuff, and so I never really lived up to my potential. Which it all worked out in the end, you know what I mean? But I think in grade 12, like I had like scholarship letters and stuff that
really?
We'll be looking at you. But then I was just mentally, I didn't want to go away. way and all this stuff. And, I've been like a king of self-sabotage. I can see at times in my athletic career. So anyways, I always loved basketball, though. We were just shooting some hoop out there, and you can see I have absolutely no basketball talent.
It's a lot better than mine.
But I love basketball, so that was the one that I really enjoyed. I mean, I was at the basketball court every night, not thinking about running. I was playing, 3-on-3, 1-on-1 basketball. That's what I did. And then I rode BMX too, and I really loved BMX. But once again, no talent whatsoever. I could do like the 180 pivot, where you jump up and you spin all the way around, and I could 180 in the air and then ride backwards for a little bit and then get out of it. And a hop bar spin, bar spin, but that was the limits of my ability in BMX. So I've always loved sports.
So you were real active.
I really love sports. Yeah, that's all I did was sports. All I thought about.
Always outside.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Who was your mentors, or who helped really guide you in like high school or junior high when you were in that? Was there a coach, or was there someone else in your life that kind of inspired you?
Yeah, I had a great high school coach in track, and he always told me there's a lot more up in that brain. I know it, and I just never, you don't hear until you're ready to hear.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, in high school, we would. Friend of mine and I, there was only 2 guys on the cross country team. Like, it's this tiny little school, right? And we'd run out of view of the coach, and we knew how long the interval should take, and we would just sit there and chat for a little bit, and then we run back around the corner. This is our level of devotion. And so, I mean, when you're going up against guys who actually want to run, you're obviously gonna get beat badly. And I mean, I held my own decently well off of that kind of training. That was always my thing. I used the races as training. It was the only time I ever really trained. But I had a great high school coach. I just said he probably could have taken me far, but the student was not ready yet.
So that was through high school. Then when you were done with high school, did you stop running completely?
I went into college, and I was like completely out of it by this stage. First time out on my own. Partying was the only thing I wanted to do or thought about doing, including not my studies, nothing. All I want to do is party.
Yeah. And
so I focused, and you see your personality come out in all your endeavors. And I was very good at partying. I was a very competitive partier, and so yeah, I took pride in that, and I trained hard at that, and I took that to a level of dropping out of university. Not even really dropping out. Just basically my parents had given me a debit card, and they trusted me, and I thought I was a good kid. And, I'm just spending it all on drugs and alcohol. And finally they looked at the debit card and saw what I was doing with it, and were like, okay, well, that's off the table. And if you want to go to school, or if you want to live this lifestyle, you're going to have to pay for your own schooling. And so then I couldn't go back to school. So then I just... I was becoming extremely introverted at this time too. I think just from smoking so much pot and stuff.
Wow.
And so, anyways, I went and got a quick job at like a call center, and I was like, no chance. I'm so introverted, I can't even go into work. Like, I can't be around people. And that's when I got involved in Elance, this like online. It's another thing now. It's called. They got bought up, but. And then I started.
Where you're like a temper, or you're an assistant kind of. Right?
Yeah, you can do like a million different things. Yeah. So I actually made like a decent, but I made enough money to party and pay my rent from doing transcription. I got really good at transcription, so I was just listening to lots of different jobs, and I would type it out what they're saying, and then I would send it in. I was able to actually start to make a half decent amount of money doing that, but I also didn't have to leave the basement. And I just stayed in the basement for 2 years and partied. And in between, when I needed to make some more money, I'd do some transcription. And that's horrible for you if you're already going very introverted.
Yeah,
so,
right.
At this stage, it was I'd go to shopping or something, and literally I was just I don't even know what I was afraid of, but I was I couldn't look people in the eyes. I was just very fearful and social phobic. And
was your self-talk? What was your self-talk like?
I was having delusions, and I was hallucinating too. I mean, I wasn't stealing and stuff yet, but I was right there to where I was gonna get into the what do you want to say, street culture or something.
Yeah.
It was right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, my mind was like, now with some research, I believe it's called something like amphetamine-induced psychosis. And I was approaching that because like I remember the one place I lived that I thought a pterodactyl lived up in the attic. Like I believe this isn't like I heard it, I could hear it going, the noises and everything. Wow. And I would see some different cars. I was monitoring the cars in the neighborhood, and I saw a pattern in the cars, and I was like, some sort of a government operation or something. And then I started to think it had to do with aliens or something. It didn't help. I was listening to like Coast to Coast on AM 800, like this, like, you know, like very, very out there stuff, you know, that was also going into my mind. But yeah, I mean, I did that for a couple of years down in the basement. And then eventually I was like, what in the world am I doing? Like, what am I doing to myself?
Yeah.
And that's when I had a million people tell me, you know, Guy, you're getting really messed up. And it wasn't really until I saw it for myself that I decided to change for myself. So
what was that? Was there a moment, or was there something like your parents said, or what was it that really
there was never anyone else said. Unfortunately, that's something that, you know, people have talked to me about substance abuse and that sort of thing. And it's like, unfortunately, until you're ready to change, it's pretty tough to change. You don't see anything really. You don't see the problem. But there was one day where I, for whatever reason, didn't party, and everyone was partying out in the I just lived in a place where we partied a lot, and everyone was partying out in the living room, and then the drugs ran out, and then there was like nearly a fist fight about like, where are we going to get more, you know, who are we going to call, blah, blah, blah. And that kind of was like, wow, this is pathetic. Like, this looks really pathetic. And I was like, that's what I look like. I was seeing myself without being in it, I guess, for a second.
Right.
And that was like when I was like, okay, I think I'm going to try and like ease off this for a little bit. And interestingly, the only thing that I had like gave me good self-esteem was my running. And so that was what I did. It was, what was the date? November 6th, 2009, I believe it was. I have the training logs. Like, I've always been I like writing and stuff. And for whatever reason, I started to log it. And I went for a 5K run. And that was the beginning, basically. I count that as the beginning of my new life, or the beginning of my triathlon career.
So at that moment, you said, I'm going to go out and run, and you just wanted to escape, and you went to go run, and then at that point, you're like, enough.
It was familiar. It brought back feelings, positive feelings that I remembered of good self-esteem. Because at this stage, like, I wouldn't even look in the mirror if I was brushing my teeth. I'd keep my eyes down because I was ashamed of myself, deeply ashamed of myself. Because I think deep down inside, you know, you have potential. And when you're living nowhere near your potential to live, something deep inside of you is aware of it. And then for me, I felt ashamed that I was, I guess, denying that this whatever desire to live differently.
So at that point, was that where Ironman stepped in, or as far as professional sports, or just the drive to just go out and start running?
This is what's made me a believer in a higher power, because I ran for a month, and I still like had no meaning, no desire to live, really. Like, I had nothing to live for. I didn't see any potential in myself or nothing. And so that's when it literally popped into my head to do an Ironman triathlon. It's not a made up story in any way, shape, or form. And I had to Google what it was, and I did, and I saw, holy crap, that's an amazing endeavor. And so then I called my mom and I asked her, what do you think about me trying to do one of these things? And she's obviously very skeptical, but she's a great mom, and said, if you want to do this, embark on this journey, then I'll give you the credit card number, and you can, she said, make sure, she's paranoid, she said, make sure you rip it up after, and you can sign up for the race. And that's what I did, and I devoted myself to that race. So basically, that was my sole purpose. I continued to work on Elance, continued to do that enough to basically pay my rent. I bought a gym membership. Eventually, I saved up for my first time trial bike, and then eventually I went to that race in, I believe it was end of August 2010.
And what Ironman was that?
Ironman Louisville. Yeah.
And then at that point, when you went to that first race, did you already commit saying, hey, I want to see if I can be a professional in this? Or was it just like, hey, I just want to go do it?
Yeah, I didn't know if I could do it. Like,
Right.
I honestly didn't know if
How long were you training for before you went and did that race?
Well, that was,
when you
I signed up in December 2009, and then I went and I did the race in August 2010. So what is that, 8-9 months I basically trained for it. No idea what I was doing or anything. Basically, it was all the training was like, it was, can I do the race, right? So all my training was to try and swim 4 kilometers, to try and bike 180 kilometers, to try and run 42 kilometers. And I had a running background, so I understood a little bit about training, how to train. So I was doing like kind of interval work and stuff. But I had absolutely no idea of so many aspects of the thing. But so I had my normal, as I still have to this day. I came out of the water like near the very end.
Right.
And then I think I passed like 750 people or something. And then I blew up on the second half of the run, just like nothing changes. So I was completely ignorant. What's funny is I repeat the same errors. Like this was like record highs. I remember it was record high in Louisville that day. And I had no idea about hydration, like nutrition and hydration. Like I just figured you can go forever, right? The mind will take you wherever you want.
Yep.
Which is true. I do believe this, but there are biological limitations that you must.
And you got to put in the work too.
Yes, you must understand these. Yeah. And I did not. I think I drank like 4 bottles on the bike and wasn't really planning on like eating anything. I didn't give any thought to this. And that's obviously a disaster on the second half of the run and the latter stages of the bike. So anyways, I finished, I think I was like 50-something or 48th place and 10:14. I finished the race. And
that's pretty good for your first one.
I think I had like the 10th fastest bike split.
That's
so
amazing.
That was like my claim to fame.
That's amazing. So then when did that drive shift to like, I'm going to keep going in this? Like you accomplished it, you set out that goal, you trained for it, you did it, you proved that you could do it. It took you out of where you were.
Yeah.
And now are you at a place now that you, as far as can look at yourself in the mirror when you brush
much
your teeth
better. It was amazing, the transformation, and that's why I believe Ironman truly is an outlet to transform your life.
Yeah.
And anyone who does an Ironman, it's impossible. Even if you don't even train for it, that day when you get out there, it will change you. You can't not change you. It's such a profound experience, and so it did change me, and I began to believe in myself. But I still didn't think I'd be a professional because then I said, okay, well, I'm going to get an education. I'm going to finish my education. And I had been out of school for long enough now that I was like a mature student. And so the government actually gave me like a loan. So you had to pay it back, but I got a loan.
Yeah.
And I was able to get back into school right then and there after that race. Like 2 weeks later, I went back to college. And then I actually devoted myself to running again. I ended up making the cross country. It was like the first time I actually made the cross country team in college. I had didn't make it the first couple tries when I still was in college. This time I made it. I think I finished like 12th in the country for cross country. And
wow.
I really was believing it that I could be a runner. But I was training. I really liked triathlon, so I just kept training for it. But you know how the world is. It's such an interesting thing that the stars begin to align. And I did that national championship, and Barry Shepley was really big in the Canadian, and he's the voice of ITU, just big in the triathlon world. He saw this Ironman result, and then he saw my college running result, and he was like, this can't be the same person. But he contacted me through Facebook just to see. And I was like, yeah, it was. And he's like, oh, he interestingly, he wrote my training plan in grade 12. He's from Harrow. He's from the same little town that I'm from. He wrote the training plan that I didn't follow, but he wrote it for me. And so we already had this kind of connection. And so then he was like, well, would you like to come out? I got a triathlon team just outside of Toronto. Would you like to come out and like hang out with the guys and see maybe if you'd like to join the team? And so I went out there. It was like, really scary for me. I'd never really been anywhere. I had to get on like a Greyhound bus and go 4 hours up the road. It was a big thing for me. And so anyways, I met these new people, and it was really cool. And then Barry saw that I fit in with the team and asked me, you want to be part of the team? And then that was the beginning, basically, of my striving to be a triathlete.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was cool. It was fun out all.
And then what do you find that as far as drives you now? Like, what is it that motivates you or drives you to continue to go?
Yeah, now over the years it all changes, right? Like in the beginning, I was just running, and this is maybe something I can offer in terms of like addiction. I shifted like a negative addiction for a positive addiction, right? So I got like hardcore into training and just like completely shut myself off to everything else. But you'll see there's negativity to that too, right? Like that's pretty bad.
What you do,
what happens to you though if you get injured? What happens if you can't run again or something? Like what are you going to go back to that lifestyle? And very quickly I started to see that I need to turn this into not an addiction. Like it's just something I enjoy doing. And so I've always constantly thought about the mental aspect of the whole thing. And I've constantly tried to keep a good orientation to triathlon. And so yeah, in the beginning, I was running away as fast as I can from my old life, my old lifestyle. And that's what motivated me, was to just go so far in the opposite direction that I don't even remember. And I pretty much got to a point where, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, where I was like, I don't even like, it's like almost like a different person. Like I don't even think of that as being, of course it's myself, it's shaped and molded who I am today, and I'm not ashamed of anything I did or nothing. But it is like a different person. My mental wiring is so different now. And I owe that to triathlon and the people in triathlon. But that can't motivate you forever, right? Like I'm not motivated by that because I do feel like it's a different person now.
Yeah.
So now I would say what's motivating me is I see so much room to improve. Like I think it's good for you. I think it's very transferable to all parts of life to truly devote yourself to something. And so I enjoy devoting myself to this goal. And I do see that has a positive impact on the world, and you inspire other people to do the same. Whether or not it's in triathlon, it doesn't really matter. But I'm giving myself fully to this endeavor, and I still see a lot of room to improve. And so that's what's motivating me now, is to, over the years I've had lots of experiences where, finishing last place out of the water at 70.3 Worlds. These are things that are kind of telling, I think maybe not everyone, but a lot of people would be like, oh, that's my cue to stop doing this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Last place. What in the world? But in that race, I mean, that for me, because I've cultivated the mental aspect, that was fun. That was part of the challenge. And so in that particular race, I ended up finishing 4th place. Like I was 52nd out of the water, and it didn't matter, right? It's irrelevant what place I finished. I'm devoting myself to giving my absolute best effort with what I have on the day. And so that's what motivates me. And that's kind of one of the challenges too when you're wired that way, because it's like the last 2 Konas, I've been like, I pushed myself to the absolute limit. So I have no I'm not sad about it, but they were like not my true limits, right? Like I screwed up things in the preparation that I didn't do to the best of my ability. And so those sorts of things upset me. And so now in 2020, I'm like, you need to stop making these dumb errors so that we can actually go to the limit, the true limits, not these, severe dehydration biological limits.
Yeah.
So that's what's motivating me now, is to just see how far I can go, see this thing through to completion.
And what is completion for you, or what is your goal, your ultimate goal?
Like 2017, I truly, when I crossed that finish line here, I think I led the run for, 20 miles or something like that. And Patrick Lang passed me at, mile 23 or so. But it didn't matter, because when I crossed the finish line, I had truly that season, and in the years leading in, I had truly took all the lessons that I had, and they all came to fruition in that race, in that performance. And so I had no negativity or anything. I felt like when you truly give your best effort and you cross the finish line, you're like, there was nothing else I could have done with the knowledge I had. Of course, you gained knowledge during that particular experience, but there was nothing I could have changed without the experience of the race that would have made me do that race better. And so I literally, that was an amazing experience. And I felt like Patrick and I really connected, because I felt like he felt the same about his performance. He just happened to be on the winning end. But I felt like a winner too, because you are a winner when you give your absolute, there was nothing else I could do. And he beat me. Great, no problem. And I remember just the emotion. I remember slapping hands, and I remember just, because the emotion is, you can't transfer the emotion, but you want to. And I remember just thinking, I wish he'd punch me in the face right now. You know what I mean? And then he would punch me, and I'd say, again. Just, I don't know. It's weird. This was just this raw, I pushed myself to the limit. It was a culmination of years and years of work. And I finished second. It didn't matter. It was just.
But it wasn't from a place
great.
of frustration of like punch me.
No,
it was
no, it was of like
a
joy.
bonding,
Joy. It was it's this weird thing.
Yeah.
That's just how I express emotion is through, I guess, physicality.
Yeah.
And so the only way was punch me.
Yeah.
He didn't. I didn't even ask
thing.
him, but that's what I was thinking. Right?
Well, it's pretty
he
wild.
thought I was really weird and twisted and probably got a restraining order on me. But,
it's really wild because that story for you in 2017 is very similar to my best race at the World Championship race in 2009. So a month before you hit your point of your bottom, I guess you could say, to where you said I'm going to do as far as triathlon in 2009 in October of that year, I raced here and I led the race for almost the whole day on the bike. It was out in the front, got off and I led till mile 20, 21 on the run. So very same as you. Craig Alexander, he caught me at mile 21, I think it was, and we ran side by side until mile 23. And that's when you got past, and that's when Craig ran past me, or ran away from me at that moment. But I remember when I finished that race in 2009, and I finished second, I honestly felt like I was going to win that race. The whole day, I was like, everything's ticking. I felt amazing. I just listened to what my inner self or God was telling me to do, and I just did it, and the performance came out, and I didn't put any limiters on it. And when I crossed that line, I was bummed I didn't win, but I wouldn't change it for anything because of that accomplishment and that feeling. So I get that feeling that you had. I didn't want him to punch me. We gave a big embrace,
yes,
a big hug.
We expressed our emotion differently.
A little differently, but it's very similar.
Yeah,
sure
that is such a weird, this is so weird. It's not weird, it's really cool, the magnificence, I guess, of life. Because that's burned into my brain, Craig Alexander winning that thing.
Yeah.
That's when I Googled it, that was the first thing that came up. But what's also interesting is one of the first things my forays into swimming is I Googled something and it was a swimming video of you and him, I think, doing hundreds or something together.
Okay.
Leaving on 120 or something. And that became my, like, what is real swimming, right? I was so far behind that. And so that motivated me for years. So the connection it's amazing the connection that you were involved in that great race in 2009 that inspired me in 2009. And then to be sitting here talking about it to you shows the odd magnificence of life. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Yeah. The connection of everything.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't know that story that deeply, though. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And then the fact that it was the same damn story.
Yeah.
It was the same
place.
Outcome.
Yeah, totally.
And you were the one on the second place of the outcome. Oh, I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah. And not many people really get it. Yeah. You know, not many people get it. There's so much energy and so much time that goes into that and goes into trying to perform.
For one thing.
Yeah. And you have your loved ones that are there supporting you. And I don't know if you felt that, but at times I felt like if I didn't win certain races, I felt like I let down. I was almost more concerned, or I would think about how I let down those that support me and those that love me, like my wife and my kids. And for me, my drive was a lot to give back to them or to show them. And I don't know if it was a place of coming of like yearning for love or yearning for that connection and not knowing how as far as communicating it maybe a little bit. But racing for me, it was a little bit of that.
The beginning of my career, I did not experience that because I had to really, like I said, with the addiction piece of things, I had to really make sure that I have very little obviously you never can do it, but have very little of my self-worth wrapped up in the performance itself. I had to always keep it that way. And I think you should always keep it that way anyway, but obviously it changes when you're doing it for a living and everything. But I will say the last couple of Konas, because I feel like I drastically underperformed, I did start to feel that sort of like I let everyone down. And it's like, I got a lot of people on the team who are like, believe in me and everything. And that's like the worst. And that's what makes you change. Like, it's good for you to some extent because it makes you like, I ain't getting any younger either. Like, it's like, like I've already done this 5 times and I did have one good one, but I've had 4 bad ones. And it's like time's ticking, guys. So these mistakes that you're making, like my wife's devoting her life to this as well, you know? And I feel you. I feel you on that one now.
How old are you?
31. I'll be 32 in February.
And you feel how many more years do you think you have in the sport?
Well, I would have said 5 or 6, but apparently 38 and 39 from Jan and Tim O'Donnell is prime time. So
I'm telling you, I mean,
maybe 7 or 8. I don't know. Jan won by 8 minutes, so if he gives back 2 minutes a year, he'll win at 40. He'll tie at 42.
Yeah, right.
He's gonna. I'm thinking in his mind now. He wants to be the first guy to win at 40. That would be motivating. That'd be really cool. Right?
Yeah.
That'd be really cool. So I'm assuming that's got to be on the mind.
That's one thing in Ironman for sure. Endurance sports is so much of it is learning the process, learning what it takes, learning about yourself, right?
Yourself is the biggest one, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to be a champion, to be successful in this sport or in life, what are 3 characteristics or 3 things that you would say, and there may be more, but what are the top 3 that you would say are needed to be great or to be successful or to be a champion?
I mean, that's a really hard question. But I will say one of the things for me that I'm watching come to fruition right now is relinquishing of control. Like I've always, I don't know, I mean, David, my coach, says to me, like, I get it. Like you like started off and you just like, you felt like it was just you trying to build you. You know what I mean? I guess you felt like alone or something, which was never the case. I mean, I always had my family and everything, but I guess that's how you kind of feel. You know what I mean? When you're coming up through the ranks, and so, but that becomes like maladaptive at some point because it's like I don't really I can't do it all. This is a very complex sport, right? There's a lot to think about. There's a lot of science now coming into the game, aerodynamics. I mean, you got power paddles in the water. Like this, it's just a lot of stuff that could be utilized, or there is a lot of stuff to think about, the nutritional side. And I've like really had difficulties relinquishing control. And there's an egoic point to that part of that too, right? It's like, I want it all for myself, which is bad, right? It's not good. And so that's the big one for me now that I'm working on is letting go and realizing that I've got a good coach who knows a lot more than me, has literally 30 plus years of experience. I've got great, Ivan O'Gorman on helping with my stuff on the bike, another 30 years of experience. And it's like, I spent a lot of years now trying to I want to learn it all myself. And it's like, now that I'm 30, coming on 32, it's like, oh, hang on a second here. At this rate, I'm going to be 48 when I learn it all, right? You know what I mean? And it's like, no, we got to stop doing this. It's not good. And so right now, that's my big one that I'm learning is to acknowledge others and to help that's provided. I've just struggled. These are all my own things that I've struggled with. But the beauty, I think this is the transferability of sport, is that these are positive attributes that I'm improving and working on that go beyond sport, right? And that's the beauty of this whole thing is it doesn't end in sport. When we always talk about, wow, what a selfish endeavor, devoting all this time to singles. No, it's making me a better person. Trust me, if I didn't have triathlon in my life, I'd be a much different person. And so that doesn't answer your question, but that's one thing, I guess, right now. And then, I mean, from my standpoint, I would say probably the biggest asset that I have had is not taking no for an answer. It's like, no, I believe that I can do this and I want to do this. And you know how many times I have had people say, there's just no way. There's no way. Your pedigree, especially in the water, just no chance, guy. And I agree. I mean, you got to improve the swimming. The beauty of this sport now is that you have to be well-rounded. You know what I mean? The sign of a true sport is you can't have a weakness, right? I think maybe years ago you could have a weakness. You can't have a weakness now. Jan Frodeno has changed that. You cannot have any weakness whatsoever. And so if I listened to the critics and I've had many even people I would say are my friends say, you need to get a real job, guy. It's like, had I listened to them, I mean, I'm about this June, I'll pay off that student loan, I said, from triathlon money. So, I mean, it's been a real career, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not to mention just the positive changes it's had. And so you got to listen. This is a challenge, right? You got to listen, but you also got to not listen. You got to figure out what to listen to and what not to listen to. So that's a positive attribute to I guess, heavy perseverance.
Yeah.
Relentless perseverance. Yeah.
Pushing through at all costs, not giving up.
Yeah.
And then belief too. I mean, I
Belief
hear
is,
a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then I think my mindset has been a real asset, which as we discussed, my mindset, and I always try and cultivate this, is just give me your best effort with what you have on the day to the best of your ability. And you see a lot of guys drop out and all this sort of stuff, and that's because I don't think they're cultivating the correct mindset. When you toe the line in a race, it should, and I truly feel this way. I give my wife a kiss goodbye, and it's like, this could be it. This could be the end, because I'm going to give it all. And I might go too far, you know what I mean? And I'm prepared to do that. And so it's very solemn, because there's no coming back now. Like, it's like, when you toe that start line, I want you to give me everything you have. And so you get a flat tire. I know you'd like to drop out now. I know you're not going to make any money or anything. I'm sorry, that's not the right mindset. It's, you give me your best effort. With the adversity or lack of adversity, I want to see your best effort. And I think, and that's irrespective of placing and all that thing. And I mean, some people are going to argue, oh, you're a professional, sometimes you got to drop out. But it's like, unless you're physically, like, going to hurt yourself physically, an injury or whatever, I don't think you should drop out. I think you should, because I would have loved to drop out this year in Kona, 2019 in Kona. But you're taking away, I learned that from Sebastian Kienle. I mean, you're taking the glory away from Jan. Jan, you should feel the breadth of Jan that day. And I did. I was like 40 minutes behind or something like that. Like, it was like, once again, it's like, oh, maybe you should do something else. You know what I mean? But if you're wired properly, you don't take no for an answer and you keep going. So I think that's important. Your mindset, having a proper orientation to the thing is extremely important.
100%. So, but in your mindset, like, when you kiss your wife as far as goodbye in the morning and you go out to do your race and your performance, and you're going to get everything that you have, do you now, as you talked about as far as letting go, do you have a sense of letting go expectation or letting go of maybe pressure that you put on yourself? Have you gotten to that point where you just go, okay, it is what it is, I'm just going to focus on one step at a time? Or what,
we've been it's like the double-edged sword. We've harnessed, like, at first I had a blog, and then we turned it into like a vlog on YouTube. And so that's what I stand for. That's what I truly stand for deep inside my being, is when you toe that line, this is a sacred. You're doing something very sacred. It's a privilege. It's not a right. And so you owe it to everyone, the whole world, yourself, to give everything you have to the best of your ability, regardless of what happens. You might get last place. It don't matter. I still want you to give me everything you have. And so, the double-edged sword of that is I preach that. But then when you're out on the Queen K walking at mile, I'm already walking at mile 10. That's a long way to go. But you better damn well stick to your thing. And so I could have walked the whole way and it wouldn't have hurt that much. But I ran that 3:13 marathon. It was the hardest run I ever done, 3:13. I feel like truly I was nearing death because I was so severely dehydrated. And these are all problems that I need to fix. But I did give my absolute, all my performances I've done have all been best efforts. Like, I gave my absolute best on the day, and I stand by that. And I think that's good for you. You should have that orientation.
Yeah. I find that for me, letting go those pieces where I've had the best performances, and I think that's one of the things that gave me the advantage against a lot of guys that I raced against, because a lot of times on paper or pure talent, they should beat me every time. But I think when I performed and when I raced, I would show up to the race going, I'm going to give everything I have and we'll let it go. And however it unfolds, but I'm going to give every ounce that I have. Mm-hmm. And it is what it is. Where so many other guys or girls that are out there racing will put so much pressure on themselves or expectation that ends up stopping them or slowing them down, or the self-talk that they have.
Yeah, I agree. I guess we're talking about the flow or whatever you want to say. All my best races have definitely been, there was very little self-talk. It was one continuous. And now we get into like the spiritual side of racing, and that's another piece that I believe for ultra endurance stuff anyway. Is we get a connection to timeless nature, the true nature of reality when we're doing these things. The thinking stops, and you are swimming, you are biking, you are running. There is no you. There's no in between. You're the whole act. And oftentimes we forget that with I guess this incessant thinking that we have going on. but you taste it for a second. Every now and then you taste it. And your best races are when you really taste it. And I believe that's why people are drawn to endurance sport, is because they know there's something there. There's something going on because you taste it, called the runner's high, all these different ways to describe it. But that's if you have the privilege of ever experiencing that timelessness, that is truly what it is. It's like, you're like, the gun went and you crossed the finish line and there was no in between. You have a recollection of it afterwards, but there was no thinking or anything else in between. You were one with what you were doing.
Yeah, you're very present at the same time.
100% present. Because if you're thinking, you're not present, right? You're not present to that moment. You're thinking. But when you're present, there is no thinking. You can't have two at the same time.
And in that moment, are you aware of what's going on around you at the same time?
Full awareness. It's like, it's like one of those, you hear the stories of the samurais and stuff. When they're fully present, they like catch the throwing star or something. They don't even need to look. Like, these kinds of things. I believe that could be the case if that was something, whatever, warriorship or something you were studying. I studied triathlon. But yes, you get like things that's the, when you have a great race like that, like we're saying, where you're completely in the moment, those are the races where afterwards you're like, I don't even know how I did that. I have no idea. And I couldn't have done it if I was thinking about it and trying to will myself to do it. It was because I was fully present, fully submitted, that I was able to get everything out of it. You lose everything, you gain everything.
Yeah. And in that process, how do you think about everything that you have to get done, like nutrition plan or looking at your power wattage or anything? Like, are you looking at all that stuff and are you monitoring that stuff? You're monitoring your splits?
Yeah, of course. Of course. You're fully
you're thinking through all that.
But you're a warrior. You're a machine, and you know how to do it. You don't need to think about it. It becomes you're one with what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those races are. I crave those moments, and I believe that's why people meditate. I believe they're drawing from the same thing. Most deep spiritual experiences are drawing upon the same energy, the same, what's the saying? The moment we try and put it into words, we're missing the mark. You can only experience what we're talking about, and you know it. And any other endurance athlete who's taken themselves and really devoted themselves to something and pushed, they've probably experienced it as well. And so it's fantastic.
Yeah. What was your greatest performance then, where all those things came together?
ITU Worlds in 2017 was a really interesting experience because I got a flat tire. So I was making up good time. I was like, basically it was me versus Josh Hamburger. And he came out like 4 minutes ahead of me out of the water. And then I was biking decently well. I think I had the deficit down to about 2 minutes at about halfway. And then I was going down a descent at about, I don't know, almost 50 miles an hour. And I got a flat tire. So it was the first time I ever got a flat at high speed and stuff. But I remember it was just this really odd experience of like no panic whatsoever. Like I was just like completely relaxed, and I just slowed down at the perfect speed. I didn't need to think about it. I wasn't panicking. Am I going to crash? I just slowed down, went to the side of the road, took the wheel off, put the thing in the center of the channel, took the tire off, took the tube out, put the tube on, put it back in the center of the channel, put it on. Heart rate's not even coming up. Put the wheel back on, got back on the bike, and they said, okay, you're going to win it on the run now. And so I eased off on the bike, and I came off the bike with like 6 minute deficit. So I changed the tire in 4 minutes, and then I had a 6 minute deficit, and then I caught him at about 21 kilometers into the run. And it was just, I was completely present, because if I was thinking in all these things at this moment, I start panicking. Oh my God, what are you going to do? How are you going to win this thing? If I had all these expectations floating around in my head. But I was in the moment. Yeah. And it was just a fantastic experience.
And how do you train for that?
No, I don't think you can train that. I think you can be aware of it, right? Yeah. That's what I believe that's what meditation is. So I do look at my training as meditation. Like when people ask me, do you meditate? I'm like, yeah, I meditate about 4 to 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. When you're swimming, especially if you're a weak swimmer, like these are forms of meditation, an intense focus on one thing, right? And so it is a form of meditation. I mean, there's more. I guess there's, and I disagree. Actually, some would argue that's not a very noble form of meditation. Like you meditate on compassion. These are very noble, but this is a pursuit for me. This is my outlet to the world. This is how I try and have a positive. So there is no more noble for me. This is a noble pursuit.
Yeah, no, that's good. And then you've made comments before that you've talked about like fear. If you fear something, or if you're suffering in something, that's when you push through, and that's when you have to do it.
That's another good perspective to have. Yes.
Yeah, and do you address
There's
that?
something good on the other side, right? When you're afraid, you know there must be something good on the other side if I'm so afraid.
And what is the thing that you've been most afraid of? What's the first thing?
Dang, you got deep questions.
Getting deeper.
I mean, I've had lots of, fears in water and that sort of thing, like literal fears. That's a tough one. I don't fear that much. Like I don't fear. Let's try and think about
suffering.
Do I fear failure? No, I don't fear failure at all. I think I try and analyze it when there is, I guess. Of course, I'm a human being, so of course you fear failure. You know what I mean? You're like, what are people going to think? Oh my God! Like, especially in 2018 when I came in, it was almost like well, there's only two guys obviously in this race. It's just because I got passed late, and then there's Patrick who wants to get another win, right? And it was so there was a lot of pressure. But I strive to dissect that sort of thing, and so there was nothing to fear. That's the thing I think is generally there's never really anything to fear. But I'm sure I fear lots of things. Just can't think of it.
Well, and you said fear of failure or whatever, that you don't fear failure.
And I don't fear that.
In
no.
what you're talking about, how like
I'm cool if I don't win Kona. Like I want to win Kona. I want to. My dream is to say I Googled it in 2009 and I saw Craig Alexander holding up the banner, and then X amount of years later I did the same thing, and I did that through devotion. Just to one thing that I thought was good for me, but it was also bigger than myself. So,
does failing drive you more? Like when you finished last out of the water, did that day or that race say that failure that didn't bum you out? Did that just drive you more?
Yeah, I didn't even think of it as failures.
Yeah, right.
You called it failure. I didn't see it failure.
Well,
I make fun of myself and stuff like. That's the thing too, right? You're always trying to be funny, joke around and stuff, right? But it's like I don't look at it that way. I mean, that day, that swim was the best that I could do. I swam really well and I trained really hard for it. I just don't have any talent.
Well, I think that's what makes a great champion, is someone who doesn't see it as failure. I never had failure in my as far as vocabulary either.
Yes.
You don't view it as a failure.
Yes.
If someone says you lost, I don't say I didn't lose.
I got one.
Yeah.
I fear repeating these mistakes that I've made the last couple of years. I fear it so deeply, the depth of my being. It wakes me up at night. I'm like, stop making these mistakes. And I just don't want to make those mistakes again. So that's why I'm here actually right now.
But you're putting things in place to make sure that doesn't happen.
Actions always speak louder than words. And so here I am. I know it's not as hot as it normally is, but I came here to get hard data so that I drive that fear deep into myself. I don't ever want to. So there's another fear. When I crossed that finish line last year, it was a strange experience because I was like, okay, I pushed myself to the limit. That's great. But I feel like I'm nearing death right now, like truly nearing death. I lost 17 pounds. I was 17 pounds dehydrated, which if you look in the literature, I weighed in at about 165. I mean, you're well over 10% dehydrated. You are nearing death.
Wow.
5 more miles and you might have gone, night-night. I think I have a high tolerance for not going night-night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I fear that like deeply, deeply. I don't ever want to go there again because it almost made me like dislike the sport because I was like, this is stupid. This is stupid. If this is what triathlon is, this is stupid. But that's not what triathlon is. That's ignorance of how to hydrate properly.
Yeah.
And ignorance of biological limitations. Hi, baby.
Got a visitor from my dog.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I hear you though. Yeah. But yeah, being younger is different, right? This is, I guess, we're older, so we don't. Ironman's like an old man's sport, right? We're like we've developed. So when you talk about having fear, I mean, I'm sure I had a lot of fears then, right?
Yeah, when we were young.
But you learn that it's not it's not true, right?
Yeah.
Usually your fears are not, they're not grounded solidly, and you can chop that false underpinning of them.
Yeah, totally. That's good. Being injured in the past, you had a pretty severe setback a few years ago. Yeah, where you had a stress fracture. Or
Oh, it was this
clean
year.
break?
It wasn't a few years.
Was
Not
it-
even a year ago.
Was it just a year?
Yeah.
That's right. It was just a year ago.
Yeah, I was like high hopes, man. This season, I was like, I'm turning this ship around.
So what happened? What happened in 2019 that put you in that place to have a fracture in your sacrum? Is that where?
Yeah, fractured my sacrum. I didn't even know what a sacrum was
Yeah.
until they told me I fractured it. So
And what was the lead up to that? Like what?
yeah, it's always hard, to dissect something deeply like that. But if I can really boil it down to, I really started to deviate, probably out of fear, actually. I started to deviate from what I believed in was proper training methods, which is to do your easy stuff easy and make your hard stuff hard and give adequate recovery. And somewhere along the lines, I got convinced that, well, you're not doing your easy stuff hard enough, and you're not doing enough hard stuff, and you're taking too much recovery in between, so you need to basically up everything, right?
Wow.
And it's like, this is horrible perspective. I got convinced of this, and so I followed that, and I believe that's what led to. I did that for about 3 months, and I was doing some heavy training. I was doing my easy stuff. I was starting to, at times, I would be for an easy ride, over 300 watts for an hour to 2 hours. That was my easy pace.
Right. Jeez.
And then I started saying, I need more frequency of quality. So then I was doing a quality bike, quality run, quality bike, quality run, and a brick workout, which I was doing at also very high intensity in 6 days. Take 1 day of recovery, repeat that. I did that for 3 months.
So every day you were pretty much going hard except for 1 day.
For 1 day
a
off.
week.
I did that for 3 straight months. And then, about 2 months and 3 weeks. And then I started to feel like I'm having my sciatic nerve was pinched or something, which I'd had before. And I went down another 3 weeks of trying to figure out the diagnosis. But anyways, a few days later, I woke up and I pushed myself too hard in a brick workout and I couldn't walk the next day. I had to go buy a cane at CVS so I wouldn't put pressure on my left leg.
Wow.
And then eventually, three weeks later, I got diagnosed with the sacral stress fracture. And so that was the first time I ever dealt with a real injury. And that's why I beat the hell out of myself, basically, because it's I've been able to do that, right? But this was a next level, beat yourself up.
Yeah. And were there any warnings in that? Were you suffering or were you feeling any
Yeah,
pain
there was a
during
warning the day the day before it became symptomatic. The warning was I woke up and I had a brick workout planned and I sat on the couch for about 6 hours, literally procrastinating getting the brick workout done. I was dead to the world. But this is where the sort of the maladaptive side of things is when you're really good at pushing yourself, you also got to be really good at kind of feeling when to stop pushing yourself. And that was the sign that I should have stopped there. It was probably already, I had fallen the day before on my butt off the bike, and it probably already had kind of little fractured or something, so that it was probably over anyway.
Yeah.
But I did do that brick workout, and then the next day it was ooh, something's not good here.
Yeah. And how did you come back from that? How was that process? Was that a major letdown that you had to process mentally, or was it just
yeah, no,
all right,
in the
I got an
beginning,
issue, let's address it.
yeah.
I'm going to do this.
That was my first time dealing with having, and that one scared me because it was the first time I ever dealt with the fact that this might be the end. And I was like, damn, that's how you're going out like that? And because first of all, 3 weeks went by where I just thought it was a pinched nerve or something. And then I would go run and it would immediately be excruciating pain. And I flew my massage therapist from back home down because he had worked out a pinched nerve one time, which is what I thought it was, and it didn't get better. And I was like, oh my God, what's happening? And finally I got a good doctor who said, you need to go get an MRI on that thing. And then it was clear as day. So once I found out exactly what it was oh, no problem.
Yeah.
He did caution me and say, you're lucky because it's bad, it's fractured, but it didn't pop off. It's not completely fractured. It's still somewhat connected. What do they call it? Separated or something.
Yeah.
Because if it was separated, then we're going to have to cut open the glute and put a pin in there and everything. It's it's not something you want to do. So that was the first time where I truly got put to the test of how my orientation is to triathlon. This could have been the end. And I would have been okay, you know what I mean? It was the challenge was not knowing what it was. But once I knew what it was 12 weeks off basically. And I could wrap my head around that. And then it became, once again, with a good orientation, my job was to do my absolute best at recovering for the next 12 weeks. And that's what I did.
Yeah. And did you learn a lot about recovery during that period of time that has changed how you approach stuff now and how you approach recovery?
Yeah, because I took 12 weeks basically off. I couldn't really swim. I couldn't push off. I couldn't kick. So a little bit of swimming I did was just a pull buoy. Strange to not be able to like turn, you know what I mean? Like actually push off the wall. So it was an odd way to swim. And then I was, for 2 months, I wasn't allowed to push any more power than 150 watts. And I was coming down off a lifetime best 30-minute power of 440 watts. So it was like 150 if they couldn't feel the pedals, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For 2 months, basically. And no running for 12 weeks. And so I did this, and I did it to the best of my ability. And then at 8 weeks, I was allowed to get 20 watts a week. So 170, 190, 210, all the way up. And then I still wanted to go to Kona for many reasons, just because I love it in particular. And I had basically one shot, and it was Ironman Mont Tremblant, which was after the 12 weeks. It was 6 weeks later. And so I learned so much.
6 weeks of training.
6 weeks of training. And it wasn't like, oh, here you go. Just like, you can't go from zero running to I'm going to start ripping. It was like week one was like 10 miles of running. Like that was my return to running. But I ended up racing so I took 12 weeks off, and I raced like really well. Like I didn't have the endurance. I started walking at 30 kilometers into the run. So it was like 45 minutes shy, but I was leading the race, and I came off the bike. It was one of my best bikes of my whole life. I think I averaged like 308 watts or something, which I had like barely even done much over 300 watts in the 6 weeks leading in, and then I held it for 4 hours. I just didn't have the legs to go the distance, but that really taught me like maybe we are overtraining a bit. Maybe we're putting too much fatigue. If you got that kind of performance out of yourself with very little intensity, maybe you are coming into these things overtrained. And I did nothing high, like very little high intensity as well. I think I went 801 or 802, and it's not an easy course. I biked 415. And so it really opened my eyes to the fact that because we're doing it as a profession, we kind of like almost feel like if we're not training and not training hard, we're not doing our job. And it's like, no, part of your job is to recover too and absorb that training. And I think it's probably drastically overestimated how much volume, how much intensity you need to be doing. Of course, you can't. This isn't like a license to be a wimp and not train hard.
Right, you got to put in the work.
You need to absorb the training. And that's important.
Would you say that the rest and the recovery is just as important as the
100%?
training?
In fact, it's equally as important because you don't absorb and that's what probably was happening to me, because I was also doing when I did this overtraining. I think the muscles start to fatigue, and then the bones start to take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the muscles are supposed to protect the bone, the shock and everything, but then the bones start taking the pounding. I was doing a lot of pavement running and stuff too. And probably the body just said, sorry, I can't hold this up anymore. Yeah.
And what do you do as far as recovery in between stuff? Certain foods you eat? Like what is your, or massages? Kind of.
Yeah, I try and eat.
Everything.
I try and eat. I try and eat as balanced as I can. As you know, when you're burning 6,000 to 8,000 calories a day, balance looks very different.
Yeah, right? It's hard to get 6,000 calories in a day.
Yes,
eating well. You can go get a Big Mac.
You do need to eat some of the calorie dense foods. It's part of being balanced.
For sure.
The absolute enemy is calorie deficit by far. But definitely the beauty of consuming 6,000 to 8,000 calories a day is you eat a vast spectrum of food, which is really good. Yeah. So I do try and eat well. My wife helps me in that department greatly, because if I was left to my own devices, it would not be good. But she makes sure I stay on that path as best as I can. And then I've been massage a week for, most of my career. Well,
once a week.
Once I turned professional, for most of my career. Once I got that, I told you my massage therapist, when I got that pinched nerve, this is when I met my massage therapist, and I've gotten a massage a week since then.
Yeah.
And then the biggest thing is like turning off. So now I try and at least once a week, you turn triathlon off. I don't do any triathlon. I don't think about triathlon, because you need it. Even though I love it, you need to.
Is that where your golf comes in?
That's when I embarrass myself out on the golf course for one day.
Just getting out there and
doing it. Get humbled and say, wow, good thing you have no career in any other sport, so you might as well make this one work. And part of that is definitely taking the necessary recovery. And you got to listen to your body. You'll know.
Yeah.
If you're listening.
And I think that's the hardest thing to do is, right, when you're in a focused plan of like, I got this goal, I got this drive, I want to meet this race, or I want to perform like this, and you're doing your plan every day with you and your hip. There was a sign, but it's hard to hear that sign when you're so focused on what you want to do.
And that's one of the downfalls to self-coaching,
Yeah.
which I was self-coaching.
Yeah. You have no one to bounce it off of.
Having the bird's eye view of what you're doing, how you're feeling. Like anyone would have looked in at what I was doing and said, "Oh, this is absolute insanity. Like you will get injured." End of the story.
Yeah.
And so it could have been prevented. And that was probably the biggest lesson of 2019 is you can't do it alone. You need to have a coach. You need to have someone who's bird's eye view looking in and can give you that perspective that you won't be able to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, some people are wired differently. A good coach, some people don't push themselves enough, right? That's a coach. You can have a good coach for that, and some people are the opposite.
Yeah.
And it's like you push yourself too hard, too often. And so that's a good coach can see where you are on that spectrum and help you in the direction you need to go.
No, that's really good. If you had one lesson that you had to leave behind, or if you had a year left to live, what would you want to teach those around you, or teach somebody that you've learned?
Well, my one that I really truly believe in is that there are no limits. Of course, you got to take it to it's a deeper saying. There are no limits.
Yeah.
There are biological limitations, of course. Go run without drinking or eating. You'll find a limitation. But there are no limits in the sense of you can do whatever you want with the right orientation and devoting yourself. And so that's how I try and live my life is that I don't impose any mental limitations on myself. And this gets into fear and all these sorts of things. You cut all those things that go up against your dreams and your goals. And so, I mean, that's what I truly believe, and I've seen in my life is that there are no limits. I mean, if you told me that, or rather, if I told someone else in the end of 2009 that I would be sitting here today talking to you about finishing second in Kona and all these things, I mean, most people would say this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous looking at where I was and what I was doing. But I didn't impose any limitations on myself, and I continue to impose no limitations on myself, and I hope to never impose limitations on myself from a mental standpoint. And I think that'll get you wherever you want to go with that type of mindset.
That's good. I mean, that's the same thing. Like, I didn't get started in this sport of triathlon. I didn't run at all, didn't bike at all. I had a swimming background, so that's one thing I had up on you. Mm-hmm. But I didn't get started until I was 25.
Okay.
And I had
really late.
Yeah. How old were you when you started? How old?
22.
Okay.
It was 2009, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I had the same thing where I had friends and family that laughed at me and basically said, go get a job because your dreams are hopeless, right? Because the likelihood and percentage of reaching that limit or reaching that goal that you have is very little, right? But as you said, there are no limits out there. You can accomplish anything you put your mind to, but I think what we forget nowadays is that it comes with patience too. And it comes with like diligence. It comes with like, if you want to be a champion, you have to have grit, you have to have perseverance, you have to push through, you have to have belief, you have to have mindset, you have to have patience too in the whole process and the plan. You can't expect to get that limit or meet that goal within a year or a month or whatever. You go, okay, there's a time frame. You got to put in that effort and put in that time and be patient to it too.
I would say if I can add another one to the sayings, it's exactly what we're talking about is there are no bad experiences. There's only bad perspectives.
Right. 100%.
So you need the good, they're all lessons, all of them. The positives and the negatives are all lessons if you have the right mindset.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, the triathlon door might have shut on me, you know what I mean? It's going to shut on some people. But you don't need to take that as like a limit for you. Like what you're searching for, you will find the outlet for, you know what I mean? That really what are people searching for is much deeper than I want to win a race or something, right? It's much deeper than that. And you will find that outlet. And that's the beauty of I believe, not imposing limits on yourself. It's just, maybe it's not in the cards, what you're doing right now. But if you keep that mindset, you will find what it is that will give you that peace.
Yeah.
And I do feel that I have been given inner peace from this endeavor.
Yeah. I think it's really powerful. I think it's really powerful the way that you approach your career, the way you approach life, in that you've you have said this before, that this process is greater than yourself, right? So you want to leave something behind. You want to give more in your endeavors of trying to do this to be an example. Would you say that that's a true statement, that you want to?
That's probably my biggest motivator now. Yeah. Absolutely. Is put your money where your mouth is. You know what I mean? Like you've got to you talk, but let me see you walk the walk. So, I live by my principles. If I say something, then I live by it. And so, I believe that's all of our duties. We're all inspiring each other, right? And that's probably what we are all yearning for, is to contribute to the world in a way that we find meaningful. And so everyone has that power. It doesn't have to be triathlon. Yeah. It just happens to be my outlet. Yeah. So
that's so good. That's so powerful. No, I want to thank you again, and I want to leave with just saying that it's been an honor to get to know you a little bit more in this last week. You know, I've known who you are.
Likewise.
We've met a few times. We've chatted a couple times, but to really get a little bit more perspective, to have this talk with you, and to really hear that you really care, that you're more than just an athlete. I see that for sure. That you're super kind and giving, and I believe that with the journey that you're on, with the team that you have around you, and your mindset and your, as far as belief, that you can reach that goal, that you can get to that. So I'm going to be out there cheering you on.
Cheers, thanks. It's been a pleasure too.
You know, and it's been an honor.
It's fun. You had a good conversation.
Yeah, I enjoy it. Thank you.
Sometimes you do these things and it's humdrum.
That
was fun. You put me on the spot on a couple of those.
Well, there you guys go. Thank you for joining us for this podcast with Lionel Sanders. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go ahead and share it on your social media. Tag myself at Chris Lieto, and also tag Lionel Sanders, which is at LSandersTry. And please go and check out Lionel's YouTube channel as well, Lionel Sanders. You get an inside scoop into his life, into his races, and you can learn a lot from videos that he posts on YouTube. So go check out his YouTube channel as well. Thank you again for joining. I hope you got a lot out of it, like I did, learning a little bit more about Lionel and the inside scoop into his life.